everyone, it's Amy here. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So today I have a recommendation video for you. Books I think you should read in springtime. I think they would be perfect for springtime. I've got 6 books to share with you, a real mixture of stuff. I've got non-fiction, we've got mystery, we've got a classic as well. So I'm really excited to share them. Let's jump in. So the first book I have to recommend is English Animals by Laura Kay. So this book follows the story of a young woman from Slovakia who moves to England and moves in with a couple in a rural countryside house. Before arriving, she's not entirely sure what she's going to be doing when she's working for this couple, but upon her arrival, the husband of the two, his name is Richard, takes her on and actually gets her working doing taxidermy. Which I hear you say, that's very bizarre, and yes, it is a bit bizarre. Not something I thought I would ever enjoy reading about, but it was really interesting, and her dedication and her skill in doing the taxidermy was a really interesting element of this story. She is really loving working for this couple and living in their beautiful home, but then she slowly starts to realise that she is falling in love with the woman of the couple. I won't tell you any more. It's a really brilliant book, and one I think would definitely be really nice to read in spring because of the descriptions of the lovely rural countryside in the UK. Absolutely wonderful, would highly recommend. Next up we have a little bit of a mystery novel, and that is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. I've mentioned this one a number of times because I love it. It is such a good book. It's set across multiple generations, it's a family tragedy, it starts in Australia with a lost girl who doesn't know how she's got there, where her family are. She's taken in by a family in Australia, but then when she realises that that's not her place of origin, where she was born, she goes basically on a mission to try and discover where she came from. That search leads her to Cornwall in the UK, and so we read her story, we also read through the perspective of her granddaughter, and we also read through the perspective of somebody, like an ancestor, going back in time, spanning across like 100 years. Lots of incredible female characters, a real fantastic mystery, and it all comes around to this forgotten garden. A garden that was nurtured by all 3 of the women in this book. And it's just beautiful. Certainly with that storyline and this beautiful spring-like cover, it's definitely one I think you could enjoy at this time of year. Next up we have Cersei by Madeline Miller. So this is a Greek mythology retelling. It tells the story of Cersei, a daughter of a titan who is banished from the land of the gods because she has been practicing witchcraft, which they see as like an abomination. They think there's all manner of things wrong with her, and they send her away as punishment. All through the book you hear mention of other well-known Greek heroes and gods and goddesses and all of those things, so it just makes for a really enjoyable read. The witchcraft element of the book and the tending of the land and gathering of the herbs and the spices in order to actually do her spells and things is what makes me feel so spring-like in this book. It's just really wonderful. If you've never read anything from Madeline Miller before, I would really recommend you do so. The Song of Achilles is another book that I've read from her, also a 5-star read from me. Such a fantastic book. Go and check her out if you haven't done so already. Next up we actually have a non-fiction book, and that is Eat, Sweat, Play by Anna Kessel. So I feel like spring is certainly the time of year where people getting out a little bit more, probably exercising a little bit more because the sun's out, we can actually go out and it's not freezing cold. And so this book is a really interesting look at women in sport and the history of women, how women were kind of kept back from doing sport because literally people thought that if we jumped too much or did certain things that like our insides and our wombs would like destroy themselves, and so we wouldn't be able to reproduce, which is insane. It was certainly a book that I didn't think I would really enjoy because I'm not a hugely sporty person. However, the discussions on children in school and the mindset around sport and women and how you're kind of brought up, and certainly my age group, and how sport was kind of purveyed to girls in school. You know, we should be doing netball and hockey because that's the things that girls do, and you shouldn't be like tackling people down in rugby and things. Like, I can very viscerally see how that has affected my sporting life and my thoughts towards sport as an adult, and so that really brought up some really interesting thoughts for me when reading the book. It's definitely one that I would recommend even if you wouldn't consider yourself a particularly sporty person. I think it's just a really intriguing book. And next up we have a book that I enjoyed so much when I first read it. It was definitely a 5-star read from me, and that is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This is another book that is set over multiple generations. It's the first book that I read that was written in such a way. So we essentially follow two sisters who end up going down very different life paths. So one is taken into slavery. It's set in Africa. It begins in Africa. And the second sister is actually married to one of the slave traders. Now, when I first read this book, I thought we were actually going to just stay with those two sisters, but we don't. We actually follow their generational line, all of their ancestors, right the way down to present day. It's such a clever novel, the way it all links in and the way you kind of start each chapter getting to know this new character, and then you realise how they link in or how they're related to the person beforehand. And it paints this whole picture of this family and brings to light so many important discussions on violence against people of colour, on how like the slavery started and yet still at the end of the book in present day this shit is still happening. It's such a clever book and incredibly moving. One I think is really important for people to read, so I would highly recommend. The final book I would recommend for reading in spring is I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. This is a terrible cover, so ignore this one and just imagine it looks really pretty. So this book follows a family who are living in the countryside in a dilapidated castle that is literally falling down around them. They have barely any money, can't afford much furniture or food or anything like that, and they're not actually paying any rent on the castle because the person who was their kind of landlord, I guess, has passed away. It's told through the perspective of the daughter of the family called Cassandra, and it's basically her diary of what's happening with her family and all of the kind of quirky things that their family does. The novel gets exciting when the nephews of the landlord who passed away come over from America to take ownership of their land and the house that has been left to them, and so they meet the family and the relationships that form between Cassandra, her sister, and these two American men are just fantastic. Full of the joys of spring, full of the adventures of new love. It's a really sweet, beautiful novel told through a very innocent and wonderful perspective. I would highly recommend. So those are all the books that I have to recommend to you today. I would love to hear down below if you have any books that you think would be fantastic to read in spring. Come and let me know in the comments. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? Come and have a chat with me. As always, I will leave links to everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye!